and then I hammered a nail in and tied some string round it, and went all the way to the bottom of the garden, trapped between both of our garages, and tied it to a metal spike and dug it in the ground.
This is a subject that's up to debate in the fencing community here in the States, whether you use a string line or not. This reaction video, sponsored by Nationwide Industries, but Nationwide Industries is more than just a sponsor. I legitimately enjoy doing business with them, both with the Cornerstone 2 hinges and the Trident latch that we use on our pool gates, or on their full line of chain link hardware. They're great people to work with. I appreciate them a lot. If you're looking for a supplier, you should check them out too. All right, guys, today's video is titled Concrete Fence Post Fencing DIY. That's probably the fourth time I've tried saying that. Apparently, it's a bit of a tongue twister. The channel is The Carpenter's Daughter. To find this video in its original format, we'll link in the description below. Here we go.
I think this fence is asking for it to be my next project, don't you? So thanks so much for all the amazing comments and vote of confidence in my last video on my patio. But today, it's giving me a lot more confidence to crack on with the next job. I live on a main road.
It's good to see other channels also really struggle with road noise. It's one thing, we were recording a video yesterday we had to move locations 2 or 3 times just to try to get a quiet place. So this fence, yeah, looks like it's seen its useful life. Now it looks like probably concrete posts in there right now. So it's interesting to see UK-based fencing versus here in the States. So they typically build their panels in between the posts, whether it sounds like she's going to replace it with concrete posts, but whether concrete or wood posts, even when using wood posts, they'll still build the fence inside of the post most of the time. Now, if you follow the channel, we did a reaction on D&J Projects video. That's been a little while ago, where they actually did run the rails outside of the post. So, but to my understanding, and this could be wrong, but from the videos I've seen, it seems like most of the fences installed in the UK are installed in between the posts.
Replace the whole fencing between me and the neighbours, and most of the panels are completely rotten and the posts are very wobbly. So to start off with, I'm just going to rip out the first few and then we'll take it from there.
Looks like a steel device that was driven in that then held the 4x4 or the wood post. I don't know what the dimensions were. Kind of an interesting thought.
So just like my patio project, I ordered everything from Buildland because it was much cheaper. They're the same company as Darlaston, and this included delivery, and they just craned it over onto my front garden.
So this is kind of a unique thought. If you guys watch this channel, you probably watch D&J Projects. If you don't, check them out. They're based out of the UK, out of Nottingham, I believe. But they have the same thing, a little bit smaller lift truck, but a lift truck nonetheless that has one of these crane attachments. And this is exactly what is common over there, I guess, where they'll just deliver, use a crane, drop it off there in the front yard. Off they go. Incredible. It's an incredible thought.
And I planned on using concrete posts, concrete gravel boards with wooden fence panels, and mixing gravel with post mix. So I got out my Wagner fence and decking sprayer to completely stain all 7 fence panels in a red cedar. And not only did I want to do that now to change the colour, I wanted to make sure I didn't have to stain this for quite a long time. So using one of the very old fence panels, I set the sprayer up, made sure I used a proper mask. I'll leave all the links for things below, and just use that panel as my first test to get an idea of how close I needed to be to it to get the coverage I wanted.
I like that tip. I mean, I think that's pretty useful, using an old panel of fence, whether it's this or if you're going to go stain it, use an old panel to get your settings right first so that you're not learning as you're trying to stain the real product.
So after leaving those to dry, it was time to start removing the original fence posts towards the back of the house. And to start off with, we used a hammer drill for this, just to see how things went. Yes. It's not quite 600 deep either, so we need to go a bit deeper. And once we'd removed all the posts, I needed to set up my plumb line. So I measured the width of the concrete posts because they were wider than the original wooden posts, and marked out the difference where the original post was. Conveniently, it left a mark behind so I knew where it used to be. And then I hammered a nail in and tied some string round it. and went all the way to the bottom of the garden, trapped between both of our garages, and tied it to a metal spike and dug it in the ground.
This is a subject that's up to debate in the fencing community here in the States, whether you use a string line or not. I can see where it would be helpful. Our crews use string lines to initially lay out lot lines and that sort of thing. So it's good to see that she's using it that way. She makes sure that the fence is really nice and straight for the length of the fence. Now, one thing to watch out for is making sure that your posts aren't pushing that line. The opponents say, well, the post could push it out of line, right? Which is true. If your posts touch that line at every post, you could start seeing it have a bow where each post incrementally pushes out a little bit more. What we'd recommend is running a string line several inches inside of the fence line, so say 6 inches, and measuring 6 inch off the line to each post. That way, there's no chance that the post is going to push that line. You can still maintain the nice straight edge of the fence by using the string line without the fear that you're pushing it out of line. Just a thought.
So once we'd done that, it was time to start removing any concrete that was originally supporting the old posts. I really underestimated how much concrete was under there. So I found the best way to do this was alternating it with a trench shovel and just getting down there and removing big bits by hand wearing gloves. And to see if I'd dug deep enough, I made a measure mark on a really old piece of wood and just stuck it in the ground and just used that for every post. And instead of digging holes that were 3 widths of the concrete posts, my dad recommended about a 2-inch gap all the way around. He's been doing sheds and fencing for well over 40 years.
Yeah, the 3 times the width of the post is kind of a good rule of thumb. On a 4-inch post, it would leave you with a 12-inch hole. You'd really want more concrete around these posts than just the 2.5 inches to make sure that they're really good and grounded.
And then I chucked in roughly about 20 kilograms of the gravel straight into my wheelbarrow and then poured in 1 whole bag of post mix and just dry mixed that together in the barrow. So I left that to one side for a minute while we focused on lining up the fence posts. And I know a lot of people space out their posts by using a cut piece of wood to the same width of their panel, but we just use the gravel boards and just roughly place them where they should be. It just saved a lot of lifting later on.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you're still going to have to put the gravel board in that spot when you're done with it. Might as well move it over there in the beginning and have it set the width of your panels.
Now we were ready to start setting in the first post. And the first thing I would do was chuck a couple of pints of water into the hole while the post was in place and chuck in a couple of shovel loads of my dry concrete mixture. Then I tamp it down with an old scrap piece of wood just to knock any air out and bring the water to the top and then keep shoveling in more mixture. And although you can't see it, my fiance was holding it in place with a spirit level while I was focusing on shoveling it all in.
So this is kind of a hybrid method. Another conversation going on here in the States in the fencing community is wet set versus dry set. Do you pour in wet concrete, wait for it to dry, or do you pour in dry concrete, compact it, and then let it pull the ground moisture out? This seems to be a bit of a hybrid method, so maybe there's an option C.
So once that was secure, we made sure we worked on the second post. But I found it really hard to make sure the whole back area was level using another piece of string because it's all on a hill and slopes towards the garage. And again, we lined the concrete post to the plumb line and used a spirit level. And then filled our second hole with the gravel and post mixture. And notice while that was setting, we had the gravel boards jammed into place. And then it was time to put our first fence panel in. And we only had one step ladder, so I helped guide it through while I was at ground level. And this is when it started to feel like it took shape.
So I think she said it was a red cedar stain. That stain looks very red, like incredibly red, which might be a thing in the UK. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below, I suppose. But for one here in the States, it looks incredibly red.
And before we started craning up the gravel boards and putting packers underneath to make sure everything was level, we just focused on the rest of the posts. And at this point, we realised it would be so much quicker if we got a concrete breaker. And I tried to take some of your advice by calling places to hire one for a Saturday to get a one-day price, but everyone wanted to charge me the whole weekend rate. So instead, I just went to JTF's wholesale warehouse and bought one for 120 quid. And it really sped up the whole concrete process. I did very carefully chip away and I wore goggles and ear defenders because it was pretty loud and this was my first time using one, which is so exciting to say. And once our slope garden reached to its highest point, I then balanced a long piece of wood to the same width of each post in situ and checked to see if it was straight using a spirit level. It needs to be up about an inch. And once we got it right, we checked to see if the post was straight again and carried on until we got to the final fence instalment.
Now, one thing to note too, when using the concrete posts, you will have to stair step the panels. The alternative would be to slope the panel. She said that it fell from or towards the garage. It fell from one point to the other as it went to the garage, but there was a slope is the point. If you custom built the panels on site, the fencing on site, you could slope it to you could slope the fence to match the grade. But with pre-made panels in the concrete post, it seems like the drawback there is you would have to stair step it. You'd have to step it down.
So I don't know if you can hear me because it's very windy, but that is it for this project. And I have to say it was much harder than doing the patio on my own because there were lots of heavy lifting because the concrete posts and gravel boards you can't lift on your own. There's a lot of concrete underneath and you don't really know what you're going to deal with until you get there. And yeah.
Well, guys, let me know what you thought about this video in the comments below. The concrete posts are, again, an idea that I stumbled across watching D&J Projects videos. I think it's an incredible idea. We're not there yet on bringing them to the States. Well, I'm not there yet on bringing them to the States. So it sounds like there's a few people in the States that currently do make them, but albeit not on a large scale, it seems like. Anyway. Let me know what you guys think about the video, but also about using concrete posts and gravel boards with pre-made fence panels as a fencing style here in the United States. Until next time, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors.